we are going to go ahead and get started to today's webinar, Yoga as an Active Self-Care from Librarians. This is a webinar from the network of the National Library of Medicine, and the series is hosted by the Greater Midwest Regional Office, located at the University of Iowa. Hence the Kernel of Corn and our Kernel of Knowledge webinar series. If you are a user of Twitter or Instagram, please feel free to share anything from the webinar using the hashtag #HelpForLives. You can see, oops, I didn't change that there. I'll do that now. This webinar is being recorded. In about 2 weeks, we will post this recording on the network of the National Library of Medicine's YouTube page for future viewing or reference. I will be emailing out the link to everyone who registered for the webinar. Please keep in mind the recording will not include the chat panel or the attendee list. This webinar does provide 1 continuing education credit from the Medical Library Association, and I will send out that link with the recording. I do not have it today. I cannot give it to you at the end of the webinar. I want to quickly introduce myself as today's host. My name is Bobby Newman. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am the Community Engagement and Outreach Specialist with the Greater Midwest region, where I connect the public libraries in our 10-state region and across the country with the help information they need for their communities. Like many of you, I'm working from home, so please excuse my dog if you hear her. I know some of you did a little bit earlier. And before we get started, just a quick word about who we are for those of you who may not be familiar. The National Institutes of Health is the nation's leading medical research agency. Many of you might be more familiar with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases right now, which is one of the many centers at NIH. The National Library of Medicine is also an institute at NIH, and it is the world's largest biomedical library, which maintains and makes available a vast print collection and produces electronic information resources such as Medline Plus. NNLM is the network of the National Library of Medicine and is an outreach program of NLM. NNLM is made up of 8 geographic regions, and I'm from the Midwest region, which is at the University of Iowa. So I know Erin has got a lot for you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and let her get started.
Okay.
So there we go.
Oh, well, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. There we go. Yep. Okay, great. I got it.
Yep.
All right. All right. So here are the slides for today. We will be sharing these slides afterwards as well, I believe. So if there are a lot of resources on this PowerPoint. I do also want to say, okay, so my name is Erin Burns. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a STEM librarian and registered yoga instructor at Texas Tech University. Texas Tech is located in Lubbock, Texas, which is situated on land that was originally ruled by the Comanche tribes on a high plain in western Texas known as the Llano Estacado. This land acknowledgement is a way for us to acknowledge the harms of displacement of the Native American tribes due to Western-style colonialism, which has perpetuated ongoing racism. If you're able to, please look at the map listed here, the nativeland.ca map, and find tribes from your area and work to support them in whatever way you can. You can also consider supporting the Comanche Nation, which is website is listed there, or the NDN Collective, which is an Indigenous-led organization dedicated to building Indigenous power through activism, organizing, philanthropy, grant making, and solutions on Indigenous terms. Okay, so I hope you're all doing okay. I was already nervous about doing this session. I am nervous with 260 some people, but we are going to do some chair yoga. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop my screen share for a little bit, and we're going to go through this series here. So we're going to do a little bit of deep breathing so we can like help maybe bring some of that stress down and out. We'll do some gentle neck stretches, some shoulder rolls. We'll do like chair seal, or also what I like to call zombie arms, a cat-cow, where we move our back and forth. Some gentle chair poses, possibly eagle arm, forward fold, if you want to. C shape, and then the Savasana with chair support is actually what the photo is on this slide. Okay, so we probably won't do that one, but this is what we've got here. So I'm gonna stop sharing for the moment. All right, so let's go ahead and do some of that deep breathing, right? So when you think about yoga, yeah, things can be hard with a rolly chair. But really plant your feet down if you can, right? Have your feet maybe hip width distance apart. Let me see if I can move my camera down a little bit more. All right, there we go, right? So you can see me, my hands are gonna be on my knees. Move that a little bit like that. All right, and my hands are gonna be on my knees, right? I'm gonna relax my arms, try and bring my shoulders down away from my ears, and start some deep breathing. Maybe we can inhale through our nose, exhale through our mouth. And really take a moment to notice whatever you might be feeling today. For me, it's a lot of tension, really kind of freaked out about, what's happening in the world lately. And I do feel like we need to acknowledge that, all the stuff that's been happening. From here, from our deep breathing, if you have glasses on, maybe we can take them off. And let's go ahead and take our hands and rub our temples. We'll do like slow motion circles here. Inhale and exhale. Maybe go the other way. Maybe we move down to where our jaw might meet our ears. Do those circles there while we're trying to do our deep breathing. Rub our cheeks, rub our sinuses, if it feels good. And then maybe down by our chin, right? Because we hold a lot of tension in our face and our upper body. All right, so let's go ahead and do some gentle neck rolls. What we can do from here, on an inhale, maybe take your one of your ears. I'll go left ear to left shoulder first. Exhale on your way down. If you want a deeper stretch, maybe stretch out your arm and then lower it a little bit. Okay. So we still kind of try to breathe here. On our exhale, maybe put that arm back down. Bring our chin to our chest, roll forward, and then roll to the other side. So now we've got our right ear to right shoulder. Maybe go ahead and put that arm out. Take a breath here. I do want to say that if you're doing any of these poses and they don't feel good, don't do them. Go ahead and roll back forward very gently. Roll to the other side. Exhale forward to the other side. Take a breath. All right, come on back to our centered position. All right, so we did that. We can do our shoulder rolls, maybe bring our shoulders up to our ears, really hold that tension in. Exhale and bring it down. Right, real forcefully like that. All right. Okay. Maybe shake out our wrists a little bit because we've been sitting all day or typing all day or whatever it is we're doing. Jazz hands. Can do our jazz hands. Oh, shake them down to the floor. Move our upper body around. Okay. We'll go ahead and do cat-cow while I'm at it, just to waken up the back a little bit. All right, so on your inhale, you're going to come forward like you're in cat or in cow. If you're on the floor, if you're familiar with some of this, your hands are still going to be on your knees. Okay. This is usually a floor pose where we do it from what we call tabletop position. We want our shoulders to kind of be in line with our knees when we're on the floor like this. So just keep your arms on your knees, and we'll just do on our inhale, bring our chest forward, heart forward, head can come up if that feels good. And then on our exhale, we round our back like a cat like this. So I'll kind of maybe do it this way. I don't have the best, my back doesn't arch like other people's does. Right, so on your inhale here, exhale, chin down, roll the spine. Inhale up, exhale cat. All right, do that a few times, see how you feel. If you mess up the breath a little bit, like I do sometimes, that's okay. Just try and do it correctly. All right, so inhale, in cow, exhale, in cat. All right. All right. So those are some of my what I like to do in chair yoga. I'll bring this forward a little bit more. Okay. Let's see here. Can do some of those other ones. Let's do C-stretch real quick before we get started. So go ahead, maybe bring your arms up overhead and very gently maybe grip one of your wrists. Right? And what you're going to do is you're going to sort of tilt to the side a little bit so you get yourself a side stretch by very gently pulling this arm overhead. I can feel all of the bones in my back cracking. So, okay. Go ahead, come back to center on an exhale. And then on your second exhale, go ahead and tilt to the other side. And grabbing the other wrist very gently to help pull the body, right? So again, very gentle stretches. Nothing too deep, just sort of kind of working out some of the tension we might have in our neck and in our shoulders. From here. All right, we'll bring everything back down, back to center. Take a breath here. Take another breath here. Maybe you notice your heart pounding. Mine seems to be. Oh, I just want to thank you all for being here today. I can't believe there are 270 of you here in this room today. Thank you so much. All right, I am going to stop my video and I'll share my slides. When I practiced the other day, this did take me about 40 minutes to go through. So hopefully we should have some time for questions, but I understand if people need to dip out after that, okay? All right, so let me go back to sharing my PowerPoint. And just so we're aware, this Savasana chair support with floor pose, when your knees are up on the chair or couch, wherever you're at, it's one of my favorite poses. And you can just sort of like lay there for a long time, and it's a really restorative pose. So I hope you can get to a place where you can try that sometime, because it's a nice one. All right, so what else are we going to talk about today? After we did our today session as yoga as self-care. We'll talk a little bit about the brief history of yoga, and I say very brief here because I cannot do it justice in 40 minutes, and we're only going to talk about it for like 5 to 10. We're going to talk about self-care as self-compassion. I'll talk a little bit of yoga research in yoga in library settings, which some of you may be familiar with already, and then I've got some resources for us as well. For our home practices, as well as if you want to start a yoga program. Okay, so I forgot. I almost forgot I put this in here. I have a K-drama. I'm a fan of K-dramas, and so this is a scene from a K-drama called The Zombie Detective, and it's kind of cute. And if you want a distraction, I highly recommend it. And so this, the zombie is outside practicing yoga with everybody else. And somebody comes up to him and he's like, I can't believe you're doing this position. And he says, this is the zombie position. It lets you experience such physical freedom that you can't tell whether you're alive or dead. And so all of these other people are trying to do the same position. And I included this because one, it was kind of funny. But two, a lot of us feel like sometimes that yoga is, getting into positions that aren't super helpful or can be a little, what's the word for it? That are for really able-bodied and physically fit people. And that's not always true, right? So there's a lot of reasons that people practice yoga, and flexibility, yes, is one of them. And so is to get stronger and more athletic, but the reasons people continue to practice yoga afterwards include things like spirituality, that it provides relaxation and stress relief. It can provide pain relief depending upon what kind of yoga you're doing. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Some people use it to help with their disease management, to recover and heal from something, to change our thinking patterns. We talk about mental health and managing depression and anxiety. Some people use it to help manage their PTSD, like me. There's mental development. There's cognitive changes that take place over time. And then there's a lot more of this scientific research on yoga from Yoga Alliance. And so some of the resources that I use, I've done a lot of CE sessions with them, and they do have some really good research. So these links are really good to go look at. So again, here's a brief yoga history. So what is yoga? What is yoga, right? So we practice yoga in the United States as a physical movement, body based practice. But it's a little bit more complex than that. It's a complex and comprehensive philosophy of transcendental consciousness that crystallized into a school of thought sometime between 150 and 500 CE. The essence of yoga holds that the world as it is commonly perceived by the mind through self-consciousness is an illusion based on ignorance. And then the practice of yoga is designed to transform this illusion into reality by transcending ignorance and training the embodied mind to experience truth. Okay, and so if you want more on some interesting and more in-depth conversations about yoga, these sessions from Yoga Alliance, I highly recommend from Dr. Anya P. Foxon, The Origins and Authenticity of Modern Yoga and the Roots of Postural Yoga. And Seth Powell also runs a yoga podcast, yogic studies podcast. So if that's something you're interested in and want to learn more about, I recommend that as well. But basically what we get taught when we become a yoga teacher is that these early postures are from a 5th century text called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And let me see here, my notes. And this dates back to, more than, but we read backwards into these texts and these images. There's only 8 described postures in this text, and all of them are seated postures. So they're all meditative seats. Okay. And then these, the functional and foundational seat is like lotus pose, which is what the photo is here. This is a statue of Patanjali. And this allows for the other more subtle practices of breath control and meditations. And then this text also talks about 2 types, 2 ways for reaching that clear perception of reaching truth. The Kriya Yoga method, yoga of action, and Ashtanga Yoga, which is the 8-limbed yoga, again, that something that we get taught about in our yoga classes. From here, yoga starts to change in about the 11th century to having a couple more asanas, but again, it's still material evidence depicts everybody in these cross-legged postures. And again, this early term asana only really referenced seated postures or meditative seats. I do recommend reading The Roots of Yoga from Singleton and I forget who the second author is, and it's kind of blurred in that photo. And you can see here, this is also where they start using straps and other kinds of props to kind of hold the body in these positions for hours at a time, right? So these early yogis weren't doing what we think of as yoga. Okay. In the 11th century to about the 18th century, we get the, what's known as Hatha Yoga. And there's that particular text talks about ideal environments for doing yoga, what the ethical duties of being a yogi is, what those asanas are, pranayama, breath control and using breath and energy, using mudras, which are the hand gestures, and then meditation and samadhi, again, as a journey of personal spiritual growth. Okay, but modern postural yoga is something like this, right? So we've seen photos of people in crazy places doing crazy things with their bodies. And this started to happen more in the 18th century. And so it went from mere, these 8 poses to over 2,000 poses. You can get books that say like 2,000 yoga poses to do. Vivekananda brought yoga to an American audience through the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago in 1893. But some of those yoga things were kind of floating around in America and British society before then because of the British colonialism. Krishnamacharya invented this new kind of yoga that combined these asanas with the Western quote unquote gymnastics. And maybe if you're practicing yogi, you may have heard of Iyengar. He was Iyengar's teacher. And there's a lot more going on here than this, but basically modern yoga combines this physical fitness, applied medical research, and a pragmatic populism that allows it to kind of transcend most what we consider to be like societal barriers, right? We like to think that yoga is accessible to everybody all the time. There are different types of yoga that you can practice. These are just the ones that I was able to kind of come up with very basically. And like I said, this was very brief, very, very, very brief history of yoga. It is a lot more complex than those that I had just pulled out. But there is Hatha yoga, Iyengar style of yoga, a Bikram style yoga, which is a certain type of hot yoga. It's 26 postures done in a room that's like 100 degrees with like 100% humidity. There's the vinyasa yoga, which is the sun salutations, the flow yoga that you may be more familiar with. You can do hot yoga vinyasa. There's Ashtanga yoga. Kundalini yoga is a more meditative and mantra-based yoga. My two favorites to do are yin and restorative, as well as yoga nidra, which is like our the MBSR, the mindfulness-based stress reduction type of yoga, and it's more of a yogic, what they call a yogic trance. But it's basically paying attention to the body. It's a meditation on the body. Okay. I do feel like I need to point out that yoga does have a bit of an image problem because of, the way that poses get to be shown only in the final position without modifications of the work getting shown to get into those positions. Many people feel like they can't do yoga, or that yoga is not for them because they can't do whatever crazy thing that someone posted on Instagram can do. And there's also the perception, because of this again, that it's only available to white, cisgendered, able-bodied, upper-class women, and it tends to be marketed to these groups, right? It's expensive to become a yoga teacher. It's not very accessible for a lot of people. So it tends to, it just, kind of self-perpetuate in those communities. One of the places that you can go to kind of help support fixing that is the Yoga and Body Image Coalition. And they have some stuff on that. Let's see, where was I? I do have some notes here. And we know that the covers of Yoga Journal, which was a popular magazine in yoga, for years only placed white, able-bodied, and physically skinny people on the covers of their magazines. There were rarely any South Asians or BIPOC people included on these covers. While Yoga Journal has slowly been changing due to the efforts of the Yoga and Body Image Coalition and others, they still have a long way to go. But because of perceived ability, right? And we try to come to yoga from a place of non-judgment, but it can be difficult because not everybody's body is built the same way, right? So many of us learn over time that yoga is about more than just being flexible, which is why we keep coming back to it. But it can be difficult, again, if we're being assailed by quote unquote perfect looking bodies in these perfect positions. Okay, so how can we make yoga more accessible? We can, make it more affordable by offering it at libraries if we can. We can add pillows, blankets, books, blocks, straps, bolsters, all kinds of other things. If we're doing online sessions, maybe have closed captioning or interpreters, let people know what poses you're going to be doing beforehand or what type of yoga you're going to be doing. That kind of stuff can really be helpful. Okay, all right, so we got through that part. So yoga as self-care. So self-care is defined as adopting behaviors that improve physical and mental well-being. I want to make sure that we always center self-care as a radical feminist act. Audre Lorde is quoted in A Burst of Light after being diagnosed with breast cancer that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. And this term self-care was picked up in the radical feminist and queer circles as a way of fighting back against racism and other isms. And that because of the violence done against bodies that were not white, cisgendered bodies, right? And that, again, has to be acknowledged when we do this. So why do we need self-care? Well, yesterday it was because of COVID-related 19 stress. There's a lot more going on than that right now. Over the summer, the APA had 3 reports from Stress in America, and then there's the CDC's, how to manage stress. But we were all still kind of going through and all of these different kinds of stressors related to the economy, to politics, to work, to life, all that stuff, right? So this is why self-care is important for all of us. And there are different types of self-care, right? So there's emotional, physical, psychological, spiritual, and social. If you read through these, I like to think that yoga kind of fits most of these, right? It fits your emotional care because it, helps you figure out how you feel. Physical care, yeah, you're moving. It's an asana practice. The psychological, it can help with, meditation, including meditation and that kind of stuff. And it can be social as well, right? So yoga isn't always practiced by ourselves. It can be a social thing too. All right, so in fall 2020, I did a survey on outreach in yoga and academic libraries. I also asked librarians about their own self-practices at the end of the survey. And so we're going to start with the self-care practices first, and then I'll go into some of the other findings later. Okay. But first, I had 64 people respond to my survey. By the time they got to question 20, I had 49 people tell me that yes, they've participated in yoga programs outside the workplace. 12 said no, 1 said maybe. From there, the question 21 asked if participants participated in other self-care activities during the pandemic. Everybody said yes. 61 of them said yes. And then here's an example of what that graph looked like. Everybody was allowed to kind of pick and choose which ones they had. For the other category, we had things like cleaning and organizing, different kinds of physical fitness like Pilates or going kayaking or fishing, and those kinds of things. And then I asked if librarians continued these self-care options after the states began to reopen. 60 said yes, and 3 said maybe. I hope that you're at least taking, for the 3 of you who took this and said maybe, I hope that you guys are kind of working on your self-care today. All right. So from here, we're going to go into research on yoga. So this will make sense in a minute, I promise, because there is research on yoga as self-care and why we might use it as part of our self-care. As demonstrated earlier, for me, it helps bring my stress levels down. But research on yoga as a modality for decreasing stress and anxiety is an excellent, it shows why it's an excellent option for self-care, particularly over the past 5 to 10 years. A lot more research has been conducted on the viability of yoga as a modality to reduce stress. A lot of us may have counselors or therapists or psychologists that ask, hey, do you practice yoga? Would you like to? And they're not doing it because they want to force you to exercise, but because there is evidence that shows that it is a great way for dealing with stress and anxiety, as well as a good coping mechanism for when things are very stressful, and if you've already been practicing it. So these first 3 articles listed here for yoga, research on yoga and self-care. The first 2, I believe, were about, first 2 were for nurses, and then the second one was for counseling students. So again, in these 2, particularly for nurses and counselors who have high burnout rates, yoga as self-care has been shown as a really good self-care strategy to help bring those levels of stress down. Okay. Let's see here. And then the next one is that, so this research on yoga and self-care is a medical intervention, comparing yoga, exercise, and self-care in a book about chronic low back pain. Yoga was more effective than the self-care book for improving function and reducing chronic low back pain. And the benefits, persisted for several months after that. The second one talks about a randomized clinical trial. And again, it showed that yoga is an effective intervention here. The third one, feasibility and assessment of outcome measures, talked about self-care being defined as those behaviors that improve our physical and mental well-being. But they also talked about trying to get care to minority programs and using that as a pilot study to get people to do yoga in those communities. The last one here talks about using yoga for migraines. And it showed that they were significantly lower in the yoga group as compared to what they called a self-care group. And this talked about the different kinds of pain that people experience and, whether or not performing some yoga stretching would be helpful. Okay. All right. Yoga for research on yoga and stress reduction. The first one's pretty self-explanatory. It talked about how a single hatha yoga class improved the stress reactivity and recovering after an acute psychological stress task. So people were asked to do certain things that made them feel a little stressed out, and then they were able to have better stress reactivity because they did some yoga. The effects on yoga and stress, adaptation, heart rate variability among mental health professionals, again, showed that doing yoga helps bring that heart rate variability down. And then doing effects of yoga on stress among healthy adults was a systematic review, and it kind of showed the same thing, that they looked at certain studies, and it showed that, again, these kinds of modalities do help, but the but here is because there's different kinds of populations. Are we looking at students? Are we looking at older adults, right? So there's all kinds of variability in all of these different studies. But if you have something, I can guarantee you, if you type in yoga and something, there will be a paper on it. Okay, yoga research on cognitive functions, right? Because yoga marries the breath with the body as we move through our practices, it can be a bit meditative, and they've shown through both meditative yoga breathing and meditation in general that these kinds of tasks do improve cognitive function. The second one talked about changes in neural connectivity and memory following yoga intervention for older adults. And then even performing Kundalini yoga, which is the mantra-based yoga, can help with mild cognitive impairments. Okay. So those are the reasons we should include yoga in our self-care, right? We can have increased concentration and attention, which is nice. There's increased mental health and psychological well-being. There's increased feelings of connection, generosity, loving kindness, which is something that is greatly needed right now. There's some increased creativity and insight as well sometimes. All right, where are we at? All right, so I do have a little section here on yoga in public libraries, but it is very, very general. And there's a reason for that is because I am an academic librarian. I do have some research, and I'll get to that in 1 second. But many public libraries have been offering yoga classes for 15 to 20 years. These tend to be children's classes, but not all of them. Not all of them. I know a lot of you out there are working on other things. There are lots of books and examples, lots of different kinds of story times that they do. Katie Scherer's book that came out in 2017, also super useful. It's about stories and what's it called? It's one of my references at the end. We'll get there. Okay. Yoga in academic libraries. I I would say fairly new, maybe 5 to 10 years. But I do have to throw this in here a little bit with the ACRL framework when we talk about behavioral, affective, cognitive, and metacognitive engagement with our information ecosystem. We know that it's contextualized, and that yoga because yoga affects these other parts of us, right? Our cognitive and affective and social dimensions of our, of ourselves. There is a connection here to being able to provide yoga sessions, or even like a contemplative pedagogies, deep breathing before we start class, those kinds of things to get students centered for class. This helps us develop those and maintain those open minds, while we come up with our conflicting perspectives. So for me, there's a connection here. And let's see here. But we do offer it through finals week de-stress events. Lenstra listed at least 11 colleges and universities in his new chapter. Again, I believe that's listed in my references here at the end. From my own survey of 64 respondents, 21 said that their library offered yoga sessions in pre-pandemic, 4 said maybe, 51 said that the institution offered them. I asked if these programs continued after the pandemic started. 23 said yes, 23 said no, and 12 said maybe. And so that was kind of what I was really trying to understand, is if we were able to continue some of these yoga programs after the shutdowns happened. And it seems like some of them were able to do so. So that's kind of cool. At universities, we tend to offer yoga from the student fitness or counseling centers. Texas Medical Center Library, they offered yoga lecture and a demonstration as part of their wellness series. But we can also provide quiet spaces for yoga, meditation, and prayer. We do also have yoga for faculty and staff, right? So there's the UC San Diego Library, East Carolina University Library, University of Alabama. They did a restorative yoga program. And again, that's one of the ones I like to do, because you just sort of pull out the pillows and you rest in different positions. And it's really nice. And it can be really, really what's called restorative. It's really great. So how many programs are at academic libraries? I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I found about 22 through my own research. Let me go back. Let's see if it'll let me copy that. Oh, nope, not what I wanted to do. Hold on. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. All right. Because I'm going to paste that into the chat box. If you are doing a yoga program, I created a Google Doc, and you can add yourself to it. And this should be shareable at the moment. So let me just go ahead and put that into the chat box. It's got, wow, that's a lot of things. All right, and you can add yourself. So I do have a tab there for public libraries. Okay, the first one is academics, because I was kind of focused on just trying to do that. Oh, are you really? You're that picture. Which one? Which slide was that? Let me go back. I'll share my screen here. Oop. Here we go. Go back to sharing my PowerPoint. What is going on here? Excuse me. Okay. Can you guys see my screen again? Oh, nope, didn't want to do that. Hold on. Okay, great. Thank you. Play from, well, I can't play from current screen. I gotta go all the way back down here. Public libraries, academic libraries, work-life balance. Okay, here we go. All right, play from current slide. All right, so currently at Texas Tech, we offer yoga through our Student Wellness Center. One of our librarians also teaches there and does yoga. In fall, I did a series of videos on yoga at the library for Wellness Wednesdays. I've listed that on one of our guides. I created a self-care guide when I first got here because I felt like it was useful. And then because I did get my yoga teacher training, I wanted to be able to offer these things. So for spring 2021, I'll be offering a yin and restorative yoga class online for faculty, staff, and students. I'm going to offer that weekly in the evenings so people can do this from home. But I really wanted it to be able to be a relaxing session in the middle of the week. And because the pandemic is still going strong out here in West Texas, I'm not comfortable doing this in person. Again, because there's a lot of breath work involved. It can be, you know, it's worrisome in the middle of a pandemic to do something like that and then have, you know, a lot of breath work involved. So they're online for now, but maybe someday, maybe we get to do them in person. If you're starting a home practice, if you did some of those movements earlier and they felt great to you, here are some resources that you can use for yourself and for others. I do use Insight Timer in the Down Dog app. If you go to the Down Dog app website, you can pay like $15 for annually. I think last year, like it came up, they were telling me it was like $60. And I was like, I'm not paying $60. So, but I think you can also do it for free. There's Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. I started doing a lot of those a couple years ago. Those are really great. You can look up the Yoga Body and Image Coalition, and then there's videos for yin and restorative yoga as well. So again, if you're looking to relax into your yoga practice, those are the two that I recommend there. If you want books on yoga history, here are the ones that I've been looking at and using. I've read the first one and the third one. I am making my way through 4 and 5. And then the last one hasn't quite come out yet. It's in WorldCat, but it's not in any libraries at the moment. That Tracing the Path of Yoga. But the first one here, this modern body practice, I'm sorry, I can't say it. Yoga Body, the Origins of Modern Posture Practice by Mark Singleton is really good. So I do recommend that if you want to understand what modern postural practice is all about and where it came from. For your personal practice, if you're doing the deep restorative yoga, I do recommend Restore and Rebalance, yoga for deep relaxation from Judith Lassiter, or her Relax and Renew one. Either one of them have lots of pictures. They show you exactly what you need to do to be in certain positions and just sort of relax into those poses. Here are some other ones, yoga in libraries. The UNC Greensboro, Let's Move in Libraries.org has a section on yoga. There's yogainthelibrary.com. And then Katie Scherer's book on stories, songs, and stretches. And like I said, I think there are a lot more than that. Let's see here. Here are some other references that I've used. Mirabai Bush had a Contemplative Practices for Higher Education book. I'm still kind of making my way through that. There's the chapter from Noah Lenstra in Student Wellness and Academic Libraries, Case Studies and Activities for Promoting Health and Success. Highly recommend that book. The Yoga Alliance YouTube channel, if you want to look more into the depth of what yoga teachers are being taught. And then this website from James Russell Yoga out of the UK was also super useful. All right, so there's my contact information. Oh, good, and we still have like 10 minutes left. That's perfect. All right, guys. All right, I'm going to, let's see here. Yeah, I can leave this up if people have questions or want to contact me. But let me see if I can bring up the chat. Were there any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, we got a couple. Let me
Okay, great.
see here. For the initial breathing exercise that we did, someone was curious if it had a name, like is it fire breath, etc.?
I mean, we could call it fire breath, or you know, for me, it was just like, I just need to do this breath today. Sometimes I use it I call it lion's breath, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, so I tended to call it that.
The next one I see is, do you have any suggestions for modified yoga videos? They always get frustrated either in live classes, at the gym, or in videos that do flow yoga, for example. They aren't flexible enough to get up and down off the ground, and they're also unable to kneel.
Right. Then I would look for I would do a search for those then. I would search for modified poses, or just do a search for chair yoga. So they tend to be really gentle practices when you're doing it from the chair. Yeah.
So we have also a question/comment. So if the yoga, I'm just going to read it verbatim. If the yoga image problem is images of only able-bodied cis white women, why is that being included so heavily in these slides, especially when the instructor is white?
That is a good question. I did try to find more. I included more, but okay.
And I think that came in about 1:30, so I'm not sure if that includes your later images. And we have a question, how do you clean the mats and props during this pandemic?
I have wipes that I use. You can use your wipes. You know, your Lysol wipe, just wipe things down. I don't teach in a yoga studio at the moment, so I don't know how other people are doing them. But yeah, I use wipes and hand sanitizer.
Great.
It looks like somebody typed in Peggy Cappy Easy Yoga: The Secret to Strength and Balance as a DVD. Something. Okay.
We have a comment from an attendee also that said they personally liked different body types, not just skinny muscle types. I think that might be talking about images.
Yeah, and a lot of those images can be hard to find too. Like there are, you know, I did go to the yoga. What is it? Yoga and Body Image Coalition. On their Instagram and Twitter, they will promote yogis who do not fit that. There are other, you know, places and people. One of them is Jessamine Yoga, and then there's an XL Yoga account on Instagram that I also follow.
I think too, if you're looking for resources for videos, I know you mentioned some specifically, but I know the Healthy at Every Size movement, and if you do that with yoga, you will find some good. Okay, we want to get a couple more questions before we do a wrap up.
Okay.
Do you have any recommended?
Right, here's the Google Doc again. Okay.
Do you have any recommended before bed exercises to help encourage good sleep?
Yeah, there are a couple that I like to do, but it's more like a series. So they're all floor poses, and maybe I'll just take my I'll start the video and just maybe stop sharing at this point. Yeah, so I do some floor poses before bed, just basically sort of stretching out my legs. Maybe I'll do like a forward fold and rock some, you know, do like ragdoll. There is here, let me see if I can pull it up. One of the, if you want a little bit more in-depth stuff, I do follow, what's her name? Cassie Ho, who does Blogilates. She also does some yoga stuff that can be really useful. All right, here's the Google Doc again.
Erin, you're sending it just to panelists, so.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, and
okay, there we go. Okay.
It wasn't letting me copy and paste it to send it out. I apologize. I don't know.
Of course, it was only going to the panelists. Like, what else would I do? All right, let me do this real quick. I apologize, guys. All right, and then let's see here. If you're looking for a quick one to do, that's nice. I either do for bed yoga. Blogilates does several of them. She's got like before bed stretches, and then
hey guys, Cassie here, and welcome.
Yeah, I know. And then yeah, Diane Bondi is good, and I'm blanking on it. Why am I blanking on it? Right before bed. Yeah, so I just posted one of the daily stretching routines from Blogilates from Cassie Ho. That session takes only about 10 minutes. Yoga with Adrian. Yoga with Adrian is the other one. Yes, thank you. There we go. Okay. And again, I get very gentle stretches, nothing too bad. Yeah.
We have a couple questions related to being certified to offer programs at the library. So is that a recommendation? And if there aren't local programs to be certified, how might someone get that?
Yes. Okay. So I did have, there are a lot of yoga studios in the area that I used to live in when I lived in Ohio that offered, getting your yoga teacher training through them. There are some online ones now, which is really nice. And so Yoga Alliance has actually gone through the next year through 2021. If you're getting your online virtual training, you can still register with them, which is nice. You don't have to be a registered yoga instructor. It is good to have gone through the training though, just so you get an idea of anatomy, stretching, that kind of thing. I practiced yoga for about 12 years. I started off with doing Bikram yoga. I had a friend that took me to one of those classes when I lived out in Wilkes-Barre. And that was really interesting. It was a lot of fun. Turns out Bikram himself is like a total not good human. But the sessions themselves were nice. And I did feel good doing them, right? They weren't, but they were pretty intense. So I probably would, if I did them now, I'd probably only do them like once a week or once a month, right? But as I've grown older and my body's changed and I've had, whatever I've gone through. So I tend to do more of the restorative yoga. Anyway, but the yoga teacher trainings, there are a lot of them that are online now. And the one I did, I think, was called Online Yoga School. And she was out of East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and it was pretty inexpensive at the time, and then it cost like $100 to be a part of Yoga Alliance, so you can be a registered yoga instructor, and then from there you're doing online, and at the moment it's online. Those online CE credits and that kind of thing, so you can continue to keep up with that. Again, you don't have to be a yoga instructor. It was just something I wanted to do, and that's something that I ended up doing during our shutdowns back in March before I ended up moving down to Texas for my new job.
Let me unmute myself here. Thank you so much, Erin. I think we are at the end. I don't see any more questions. I just want to point out a couple things for our attendees who may be interested in some additional upcoming free webinars. We have a couple on public libraries and public health, and I think some of you are public are in public libraries. We're also doing one on trauma-informed approach on libraries, which is really important, especially right now. And we have a couple more self-care related ones. So we've got a filling your cup one and self-care during stressful times, and then another one related to COVID information. So.
Yeah, and I would recommend, I did have it in one of my previous slides before I changed them, that you did a self-care one earlier in this year that was also super useful. Yeah, so I recommend that.
Yeah, I usually send those links out to the recordings too, just because I know sometimes people are looking for more stuff. So you can register for my classes at nlm.gov/training, join the network if you're not already a member. It's free and gets you access to updates on classes and other things. If you have an idea for a webinar, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to host. And that is it. So just a reminder, you will receive an email with the link to the recording in 1 to 2 weeks. That email will also contain a survey for feedback about the webinar, as well as the instructions for claiming your 1 CE credit from the Medical Library Association. I do not have that right now, so I cannot give it to you. I apologize. Like everything, just running a little behind. So thank you everyone so much for your time and your attention today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. Namaste to everybody who's saying namaste in the comments as I watch the chat roll by. Thank you for being here today. All right, take care of yourselves, guys.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.